You're listening to the Life Edit Project podcast, where recovering perfectionists get all kinds of great tips and insights to help them feel better, do better, and have better relationships. I'm your favorite life coach and podcast host, Coach Elizabeth Burrows, and today we're going to talk about a different kind of perfectionist, the underachiever. Chances are you either relate to this directly or you know someone who does. Either way, I'm going to help you move forward with today's conversation. Ready? Let's go. Good day, good people. Welcome to episode 108 of the Life Edit Project podcast. I am so excited to be on the mic today, and I'm grateful that you decided to tune in. Whether it's your first time here or you're a long-time listener, I am grateful for you. You know, your time and attention, it's so precious, and I don't take it for granted that you'll just be here because I happen to drop a new episode. That's why I work to make sure that every week I'm offering you something that will actually be worth your time. And I think today's episode is going to be a good one. Now, y'all know that maybe for the last year or so, I've been talking about a different aspect of perfectionism on every episode of the podcast. We're talking about the different ways that it shows up, why it happens, all the different ways that it can impact our lives and relationships, and most importantly, what you can do about it. I also talk about some of the misconceptions around perfectionism, and that's kind of where this episode is going today, because we're talking about the underachieving perfectionist. And I know it kind of sounds like a paradox, it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's really not. It's very easy to focus on the side of perfectionism that we like to pretend is just an extreme form of excellence or ambition, but underachieving is just the other side of that coin. And by that I mean that wherever the overachieving shows up, there's likely an underachieving counterpoint to it. The underachieving, it's always there. It's just not always that obvious. Like when you have a coin that's lying flat on a table. If, it's head side up, you see the heads, but the tail side is hidden. It still exists, you just can't see it. So underachieving is a lot like that in perfectionism. So like a lot of challenges that we talk about on this show, the first step to making progress is to just notice what's happening, to become aware of it. And that means learning to recognize what underachieving looks like for you. Unfortunately, I think that this is actually one of the most persistent blind spots that people have. It can be really hard to see yourself clearly enough that you're able to hold yourself accountable for getting less out of life than what's available to you. And that's where working with a life coach like me can be really helpful. When I work with my clients one-on-one, there's one thing that comes up over and over again, and it is me helping them to notice when they're not getting what they want because they're underachieving. And that's compared to, not getting what they want because the goal just happens to be beyond their reach. Because those are two totally separate scenarios. Now, P.S., if you want to learn more about that, if you want support in being able to recognize underachieving in yourself, sign up for one-on-one coaching with me, right? There's a link in the show notes. You can book a call with me and we can get this party started. But let's keep going. Here are some examples of what underachieving perfectionism can look like for you. So if you're taking notes, this is where you start writing things down. The first way that it can show up is buffering. I don't know that I've ever really talked about buffering here on the show, but buffering is the thing that we do when we are preoccupying ourselves. We're using our time and attention on something that is unimportant or irrelevant as a way to avoid the thing that really matters to us. And there are lots of creative ways to buffer. So it can look like busy work, where you're doing lots of things that on the surface look productive, but they're actually distracting you from the main thing. For a lot of perfectionists, buffering can look like planning, right? You spend so much time planning or even researching and overanalyzing that you never get to taking action. It can also look like, the less productive side of things that are obvious. Things like just binging Netflix shows for, 8 hours on a Saturday instead of doing something that moves you closer to what you want. Or it can look like overindulging in food or drinks or other substances that affects you physically and mentally, so then you don't have the capacity to do what you want. Right? So that's one way that underachieving perfectionism can show up. Another way that it can show up is by simply not trying. And not trying is exactly what it sounds like. It can look like you just opting out of going for the thing. So maybe this looks like in your career, you don't apply for the promotion. Even though you want it, even though the opportunity is there, you don't throw your hat in the ring, right? Or let's say you go to a networking event, but instead of actually engaging anyone in conversation, you just sit in the corner and watch everyone else talk, right? So these are ways that we convince ourselves that we can't get what we want, but really it's just us not trying instead of it not being available to us. Another way that underachieving perfectionism can show up is with self-sabotage. And our brains are very creative at finding ways to sabotage ourselves when we are afraid that the outcome will not yield perfect results. So one common way that this looks in a lot of perfectionists is procrastination. And not just the type of procrastination where you do nothing, but the type of procrastination where you wait so late to do something that it's not possible to get the result that you want, or it's impossible for you to actually do well at the thing that you're doing. Sometimes this looks like avoiding follow through, right? So you start something, but you don't finish it. That is a form of self-sabotage. In perfectionists, sometimes this can look like under-planning. Let's say you have the planner perfectionism personality, which I talk about in other episodes. You might actually under-plan for something so that you don't have everything that you need in order to be successful. That is a form of self-sabotage, especially when you have the capability to plan for success. And then a fourth way that underachieving can show up in perfectionists is apathy. You will seem indifferent to what's happening to you or around you. And I want to call out this type of underachieving because we tend to ascribe traits like drive and tenacity to perfectionism. And apathy is literally the opposite of that. So it can fly under the radar. But the truth is, when you convince yourself that you don't care, then you start showing up as if your goals and desires don't matter. And that is a form of underachieving. It leads to you getting less of what you want. So that's what underachieving can look like. But why do we even care about this? Well, we care about it because it's getting in the way of what you really want in life. First of all, underachieving as a form of perfectionism can get in the way of your relationships. It can actually be really isolating, and I want you to think about this for a moment. It can be very frustrating to watch someone that you care about throw away their opportunities, or to seem to be wasting their talents, or just generally not living up to their potential when you think that they are capable of so much. If you have ever parented a child, you might relate to this, right? You might look at your child and say, okay, my son is so smart. There is no reason for him to be bringing home D's in science when I know that he understands these types of concepts. Or maybe this shows up in your romantic relationships, right? Where you've dated, that buster that, was actually smart, could totally get a better job, but instead they're coasting through life just as if nothing matters. And this can also pop up in our relationships with friends, peers, and coworkers, right? If you happen to be the underachiever in this scenario, the people around you who care about you and believe in you might pull back because it's simply too hard for them to watch you not get what you want. And so watching someone be an underachiever when they're capable of more, it creates a lot of frustration, which then leads to tension in these relationships. And tension just pushes us further apart instead of bringing us closer together. And we all want to be more closely and more deeply connected to the people that we care about. And this can also be really isolating because when apathy creeps in, right, if that's one of the ways that underachieving shows up for you, it can seem like to the people around you that you could take it or leave it when it comes to them being in your life. And for a lot of people, if that's what it is, if they think that you don't care whether they stay or go, their response is, well, then I'm out, right? And so we might actually back our relationships into a dead end because we seem not to care. And I know that's not what any of us actually want. But another reason why we care about underachieving in the first place and why we want to solve it is simply because when you're underachieving, you're just not living the life that you really want. And not because you can't, but because you don't think you can. And that, my friend, that hurts. I want better for you. So what's the solution? What is the way forward? How do we get out of this pattern? The first thing I'm going to tell you is to get help. One of the reasons why it's so hard to live up to the standard of perfection is because so often it's based on a result that's beyond the ability of a regular person. So stop trying to do everything on your own. And of course, I'm going to remind you, this is a great reason to hire a life coach, and me specifically. I can help you recognize when your perfectionism is showing up as underachieving, right? So I can help you check that blind spot. And getting coached regularly actually increases your personal capacity. You are actually able to do more when you have more support. Another solution, perfectionists rarely like to hear this one, is to learn to embrace imperfection as a type of success. I feel like I say this on a lot of episodes, probably every other episode. Imperfection, embrace imperfection. But I say it all the time because it works. If you allow yourself to put more things in your wins column, then you don't have to settle for losing so often. But I know that when it comes down to it, this is really hard to do if you're used to thinking of everything in black and white terms, in terms of win or lose or pass, fail, when the only thing that you've counted as winning or passing is perfection, right? I also know that it can just be really hard to stop those patterns of self-sabotage and not trying when you've been operating like that for so long. And so sometimes what you need is just more support in actually acting out the shift of embracing imperfection, right? Sometimes it's not about what it is that you believe. Sometimes it's about being able to act out on your beliefs. And that is also where my support comes in. I help my clients find strategies that allow them to actually pour more of themselves into their goals and desires more consistently so that they can stop underachieving. And then I help them learn to embrace the imperfection that happens when you're busy putting yourself out there and trying more things. And of course, I help them actually put those things into action so that it's not just talk, but it's also walk. And I would love to help you the same way. So, use the link that's in the show notes to book a call with me. Get on my calendar and let's talk about how my one-on-one coaching services can help you stop being an underachieving perfectionist. I don't want you to be any kind of perfectionist because that's not where success lies, but we can help you solve the problem of underachieving perfectionism. And if you book a call with me today, we can have our conversation, we can figure out a plan for you, and we can get started working together in less than 2 weeks. So what are you waiting for? All right, y'all, that is all that I have for you this week. I will be back in your ears next week with another juicy and helpful episode. In the meantime, stop giving up on yourself before you even get started. All right? Peace.